dialed in
to Box and Brews, you might hear something
you can use.
like tips on your cash or tips on the suds.
You're gonna want to
The
use
smarts of these stuff.
because they know the brews.
And they know the box, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks.
So listen up, cause shit's not funny.
And save yourself some beer money.
Bucks
And brews.
Bucks and
Bucks
Brews.
and brews.
Bucks and Brews.
Welcome back to Bucks and Brews. Nick,
David,
where the hell are you?
say I'm in my my humble abode. Say,
And why is that, Nick?
because the weather here in the Midwest decided to shit all over us. Kids have not had school; they just canceled school for tomorrow, so that's day number 3 in a row. Wind chill is negative 13 degrees today. The roads, all you do is slide. Everything is crap. I like you. I just don't want to drive out there when we have technology to do Zoom. So, and I officially have internet from my house now. I've come out of the 1800s, so I guess we're giving this a shot.
I mean, just to, harken back to the early days of this podcast, we used to do this from our houses because it was during the pandemic, Mike. And Nick had no internet. So he would do it on his phone through his data. He's the oldest young man I've ever met.
Hey, we're coming around though. It's getting better. So,
What are you drinking, Nick?
David, what are you drinking, bud?
I just asked you the same thing, but I'll go first. That's fine.
Oh,
So I dipped into my Christmas present again from my lovely wife, Sheboygan Brewing Company's Oatmeal Cookie Stout. It's a
That
limited
sounds-
release, so you don't get to taste it. Fuck you.
that's okay with me. So gifted from my neighbor's parents because they love me better than they love their own kid.
Mhm.
I got the Yingling Black and Tan.
Oh yeah.
And then when I'm done with that one, I'm gonna go to the tried, the true, always the blue Bud Light, bud. I'll say, here's the fun thing. I'm at my house. I'm in my man cave, right? So I'm looking at 500 bottles of bourbon. My mini fridge is right there, and it's chock full of great beers. I mean, New Glarus is just everything.
Yeah.
And I just opened it up, and I was like, a Bud Light sounds pretty good. So,
I mean, you have not had a Bud Light on air in a while.
it has been, yeah. Who knows? I might not even drink it because I do have some really good ones in there. So,
All right. Well, it's guest night. Mike, I'm gonna screw up your last name. I know it. So
It's Van Someren.
there we go. We're joined tonight by Mike Van Someren. I follow him on TikTok, and we did our what we thought was our last live last week on air. But it seems TikTok's still chugging along, even if some things may have changed a little bit here. Mike has some great content. He talks a lot about politics, talks a lot about wages. We thought a wage conversation tonight would be useful to our viewers. And just, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself and if you're drinking anything.
I am not drinking anything. I came unprepared for class, so I apologize for that. But
how dare you?
yeah, so quick background. Blue. I'm a lawyer in the Milwaukee area. Live just outside Milwaukee, and I actually ran for Congress in 2022 as a Democrat in the very conservative 5th Congressional District. And I did it because I was tired of people voting against their own interests, working class people. I grew up in a small town, 2,500 people up in northwestern Wisconsin. Started off in a trailer court, and my parents built the house that they still live in today. My dad was a truck driver, just retired about 6 months ago, and my mom is a semi-retired office manager. So I hang out with blue collar folks all the time, even though I have a white collar job now. And the more I look at the way things are going, the more I realize that it's not a right versus left. It's not a red versus blue. It's an up versus down. But a lot of people aren't realizing that. And so I'm trying to get that message out that we have an issue with the top taking a lot more than their fair share, refusing to pay any of it back. And it's backed up by history. I'm a history buff. I played football at University of Wisconsin, got a history degree there before going to law school. And when you look at the everything I say has a historical precedent. I am not coming up with anything new. I am telling you the stuff that we have done before. And when we did it, it worked out a whole lot better for the middle class. So that's my background.
I'm going to say this, Nick.
Yeah.
Don't you think that Mike and the professor would get along swimmingly?
I think it would be just a fantastic. Text him and see if he can hop on real quick.
I mean, I can try. So
um,
one of our longtime contributors and my oldest friend is a man named David Seawick. He's a professor at Lansing Community College. He's a history. He was a history professor. Now he does different things adjunct.
Really?
Oh yeah. He doesn't. He only teaches a couple classes now.
Yeah, now he writes books.
Yeah, he wrote a book on the history of Michigan.
Yeah.
Like a textbook.
That'd be interesting.
And he's got more degrees than any man should have. He's got like 3 or 4 degrees.
So, Mike, so sorry, you ran for what position again?
The U.S. House of Representatives.
You did run for House. Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, in a very conservative area. So it sounds like we have the same area type of thing. I just got done running for school board in my area. So I live in an area. They have a thing called the Ottawa Impact. It is all the the Republicans here have created their own group of people to be that much. We are known as the Bible Belt here. The joke is there's a church on every corner. So currently where I live, if I drive out both of my two, I can go left or right. There's a church on that corner. Across the street is a church. Within a quarter mile of me, there is 6 churches. So
wow, that's a lot.
That's the area I live in. So it sounds like we live in the same kind of an area.
Yep.
And so politically I don't fit into my own area, which is fine. But I look it, right. I look the part, full big ugly.
Same here. I got the beard and everything, chew tobacco every once in a while just to really sell it.
Yeah, that's exactly. I would say I got dipping right now. So, but and that's it's hard when your beliefs are completely opposite of the people that are around you, right? I mean, one of the biggest things I say all the time is you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with, right? And that's usually financially, that's usually politically, and that's usually a religious based thing as well, right? So everything in your life kind of a thing, right? So there's a chance that most people that are invested in church, their friends are church goers, they're this, and so you are the makeup of those 5. So it's hard. Well, congrats for running and at least taking the attempt to try.
Well, same to you with the school board.
Yeah, say it was. I'm not a lawyer, so everything here can and will be held against me, and I'm completely okay with this. Say I know my rights, though.
What's funny is I was a Republican my entire life growing up, and in fact, many of my views are still classically conservative.
Yep.
The issue is that the party has moved so far right that I got left on the other side of the fence. I'm happy to be out where I am, but that's been my whole thing is, fiscal conservatism or fiscal responsibility.
Yeah.
That's gone now. And that's something that I've been pushing to try and get us to do. If we're going to fix any of this stuff, we got to get more money to more people. And that's going to fix a whole lot of our problems.
Oh, let's dive into that. I guess walk me through how you figure if people have more money, how it's going to fix the problems. Because
sure.
I don't want to say I believe the opposite. Like, I don't truly believe the opposite, but I want to hear what your perspective on this is.
Sure. I very basically believe that economic freedom is the most important freedom we have, because if you don't have the economic freedom, it's very hard to exercise any of your other rights. If you can't afford to go to the doctor, if you can't afford to go protest, if you can't afford to, do any of these things that, you can't afford to defend yourself in a court of law because you don't have enough money, you don't really have those rights, right? So everything, there's a cost of living in this society and it's going up. Nobody would disagree with that. The problem is that people don't understand that we are in the largest economy that is growing larger and larger every year. And yet people are still struggling. The American people haven't gotten a raise since 1980. Since 1980, the real wage of the middle class American, average American, has gone up maybe 30%. I've seen somewhere between 12 and 30%. Most people selling around 17. Meanwhile, CEOs in that same period of time have gone up over 940%. Their salaries have. And what are they adding? Like, where is this huge gain that is justifying their 940% that everybody else is falling behind and only getting 30% in that same period of time? And so that's where I come to this idea that capitalism as a whole needs more people with more money, so that, because we are consumers, like we are all consumers. We go out and we buy groceries, we buy cars, we buy houses, we buy chew. Like we go out there, we buy this stuff. And if we don't have the money to buy it, well, then the businesses don't have a reason to exist, because businesses are there to fill the need, and that need is driven by the demand created by consumers. And so they're shooting themselves in the foot by taking as much money as they can now versus looking at the long-term health of the economy as a whole.
Well, you look at money, and we love money here. If you take $1,000 and give it to a rich person, they're going to take that $1,000 and they're going to invest it.
Yep.
If you take $1,000 and give it to a poor person, they're spending that $1,000
because they have to.
They have to.
They need.
They're going to go buy groceries, or they're going to go buy, new tires for their car. They're going to circulate that money in their local community because they don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying, right? It's the reason the stimulant, the stimulant checks. If you made over 150, you didn't get it, right? Because they just assume
Right.
that's what that person is going to do is invest it. We need to stimulate the economy.
Yep.
So like I look at it from a different perspective. I understand what you're saying, but my opinion is, okay, hey, and I think there is a point in a financial point where my opinion does change. But if you tell me, hey, you get a person making $30,000 and now they make $40,000, I personally don't believe that that's going to stimulate that economy and change things. What's going to happen, in my opinion, is instead of getting so right now they can afford a Honda Civic, right? The next, I don't even know what the next car up is. A Honda Accord, let's say, right? So they're just going to go spend on one thing. They're going to spend that more money. So they're still buying a car that, they're not buying a million other things. They're not doing that type of a thing. They're buying, and they're going to overspend. Sure, the price of house will go up because people can afford more. But I personally think the problem is Americans, in the sense of if they have money, they just go spend it, right? And where I feel you and David take a sense and say, well, they can't afford things, so they just spend it strictly on this type of a thing, right? They only spend on needs versus wants. And, I don't know, I just take a different perspective, because I think, we look at, I always go back to, if you look at a Ford Ranger back in 1990, right? Ford Rangers cost $9,000 brand new. We go forward, 20 years, and a minimum Ford Ranger for a base one is like $24,000, right? Nothing's changed with that, so sure, the CEO's making more money, but it's because people are willing to finance for longer, right? I think the problem is if given the ability to anybody to be able to I think credit's got to be a thing. The government allows it too much, and because, right, that's our freedom is to go spend it, but people don't choose. I don't think people are educated enough to choose the right thing, what to spend it on, right? Given an extra $10, I ask people all the time, hey, can you afford to invest $10? Well, yeah, I could do $10, but 90% of the time I was like, why aren't you investing $10? Well, because I'd rather, $10 doesn't make a difference. And it's like, man, over the course of 50 years, $10 a week, that's going to be huge money. You're just not patient enough to wait 50 years to get to that point, right? I personally believe, like, yes, I'm going to have some money in my life, but like, if it keeps investing through my life and my daughter gets it, I can create generational aspects. If my daughter doesn't touch that, now the third generation, it has the ability to just be crazy. So
Nick, was credit scores a thing in 1980?
No,
No. Why did they become a thing?
to figure out who's a possibility of lending to.
Right. Because we went from a cash society to a credit society. And we did that because of one reason. They could own you.
Yep.
That's the bottom line. Now they own you because you're in debt. So you're willing to do more things that you weren't willing to do yesterday because you didn't have that debt.
Yep.
Well, and let's also not forget something. Wages have stagnated since 1980, right? And yet costs continue to go up, and which requires you to finance more and more because the cash that you used to be able to have to afford that $9,000 Ford Ranger that's now $24,000, you should have more money so you could afford to pay cash for it if you wanted to. So the willingness to it's yes, there might be some willingness to it, but how much of that willingness is actually a necessity, right? Because that's something that when your wages are stagnating, but you still need to live, that's where you get this, okay, I guess I'll finance it because that'll keep my payments low so I can still spend on all these other things. There's a really good creator. He's actually not a creator, he just also is a creator. Scott Galloway. Have you ever heard of him? He's a ED professor.
Yeah.
He hit the nail on the head. He's talking about the fact that millionaires, an extra $5 million to somebody that's making $10 million is really nothing. Like they've already got more than enough money that they need. But an extra 10 or 50, 10, 20, $50,000 on a family making $50,000 is life-changing. It lowers the temperature on everything. And I would argue, I've had these conversations with my colleagues all the time, with healthcare and health insurance, how much of our declining health is due to the fact that we are stressed? We know stress has negative impacts on our health. People being stressed about money all the time. Like how can we not think that there is something to that? That the stagnating wages are actually causing us to become less healthy. And the cheaper foods, the snack foods that Ozempic is actually showing to eat into their profits because people just aren't buying them. But these snack foods that we are getting that we all know aren't healthy, but yet we still eat them. It's something that, it's cheap. It fills your belly and it takes away the pain for a little bit, the hunger pains. So I get what you're saying. And I trust me, for a long time I was there. But when I saw that wages hadn't gone up since 1980, and you wonder why everything else is going up exponentially. We've been doing nothing but cutting taxes on the wealthy since the 1980s as well. And as we do that, things become more expensive for the rest of us. And it's something that, you have to balance it. I mean, we went from a tax rate of 70% down to 28% in the 80s, a top tax rate. I mean, you can't finance a government. You can't finance our future on 28% as a top tax rate.
Well, one of the big arguments by conservatives is minimum wage was never supposed to guarantee you any type of standard of living, which is just bullshit.
Right. It was FDR said so. And when he enacted it, he said, this is not just supposed to be a minimum standard of living. This is supposed to be a good quality of life. And that any business that can't afford to pay somebody a minimum wage doesn't deserve to be in business in this country.
Correct.
We have high expectations for businesses that operate in this country. And by the way, we have a lot of very good medium and small businesses. Remember, small businesses are I think anything under 500 employees at this point. Like we have some very, very good small businesses, especially in the Midwest, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois. We have very good small businesses that take care of their people, try to pay as much as they can, but they're getting hosed by these multinational corporations that exist outside the constructs of really any borders and are paying their CEOs 1,200 times the median worker.
Well, and when we look at minimum wage in 1980, it was $3.10. It's gone up $4.15 in 45 years.
Unless you're a server, then it's only $2.30.
Correct. Well, and it's funny because my wife owns a small business, and in Michigan, they passed a bill to get rid of tipped hourly or tipped wages and bring all those servers up to, the minimum wage. And Brian Calley, who's the head of Small Business Association of Michigan, who was lieutenant governor under Rick Snyder, a Republican,
Yep.
Sends out emails at least every other week. Hey, you need to write your representatives. You need to tell them they need to repeal this. This is horrible for business. It's just going to screw everybody over. And I've told my wife time and time again, keep me away from Brian Calley because him and I are going to have issues if we come face to face.
Yeah. I am for actually cutting taxes, but I want to cut taxes from the bottom up, not from
Correct.
the top down. I don't see any need to give somebody making, $500,000 a tax break just so we can give somebody making $30,000 an extra $100 a year. Like I'm a big believer in cutting taxes from the bottom up because it benefits everybody because we have a progressive income tax that we all pay the same as long as we make the same amount of money. It's only when your money crosses that threshold that the money in that next bucket gets taxed higher.
Well, and so right, we've done kind of an episode on that tax thing. So, and I've lost friends because of it. you know, I'm a firm believer that I don't care how much money you make. I don't believe that anything should be taxed higher than 49.9%. You should never work for less than half of what you're supposed to do, right? Like you're saying, hey, we get to $250,000 and now all of a sudden, or $1 million. Now all of a sudden I'm making this, I should be taxed at 70% or whatever. 49 and a half. I don't think that any person should give away more than half of what they're making, right? Also, right, I'm a small business. I pay fair wage. My guys don't complain. They show up to work. They do the right thing. We can all, it sounds like we can all agree that, the problem is businesses own you, right? They give you a little bit of something. Back in the day, back in the 80s, 90s, it's not even 90s, right? I mean, you had stability, right? You used to be able to, David's kind of going through a little bit of stuff where you can go work for a company. You were supposed to get promoted and then you were supposed, if you work hard, you get things, right? I was raised by that generation. So I go into these companies and I work hard. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, you don't have a college degree. You don't have and it's like, whoa, I'm like, I show up every single day. I'm the hardest work, I can't say the hardest worker, right? Because there's people that, but very hard worker. I have the want to move up and you're relying because I don't have a college degree. Like it just blows my mind. So, I think, I guess so you want to force taxes on businesses for, especially for CEOs. Now, do you assume that if they give living wages that they don't get taxed on that amount?
Yeah, because that's how it works. You get to deduct your payroll. And so what happens is when you raise taxes on these individuals, what they have to do is they have to decide, am I going to keep this money out of the economy or am I going to increase things that will increase my wealth? Because we don't tax wealth, we tax income. And so you can think of taxes as like a charge for keeping your money out of the economy. Right. If you want to put your money back in the economy, we deduct that. So that means your payroll, you get to deduct. So if you're raising your wages on all these folks, that's causing your tax burden to go down. Not only that, you're giving these people, you're spending money on these people, so you're keeping them happy. So you're not paying to train new people. You're not paying to find new people. These people are becoming more productive because the more you do something, the better you become at it. 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10. And so when you do this kind of stuff, there is a knock-on effect where all of this ends up benefiting you because you create a more valuable company in the long term. Do you make less money per year? Maybe, but if you're just making that money to put it in the stock market, wouldn't you rather have more control over by putting it in your business and knowing that your employees are taken care of? I mean, this is something that we did in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. In the 50s, we had a top tax rate of 91% on income that today would be like $3 million. So we had a 91% tax rate. Nobody complained about it. We built the interstate highway system. We put a man on the moon. Like we did all of these great things. We defended democracy worldwide, fought back the communists. Like whatever you want to hang your hat on, our government did, and we did it because we had enough income there, and we had enough people feeling like they were contributing, and that everybody was rowing the boat together. To steal from PJ Fleck at Minnesota.
So,
yeah,
Western Michigan guy, Northern Illinois grad. Anyways, so I want to kind of bring us back to Reagan because everything you can trace back in this country that's bullshit is tied to Reagan. So, like a 42% high mark on taxes for anybody making over 200,000. But what Mike brings up is a good point. If you made over $10 million, now they're taxing you at 90%. They're not taxing you at 90% on everything you make up
Right.
to your $12 million. They're taxing you at 42% on everything you make up to 10 million. And from $10 million and 1 penny to $12 million, they're now taxing you at 90%. So at that point, if you're a CEO that's making, $23 million a year, you have an incentive to go, all right, do I really need that compensation package, or should I put it back into my workers and actually make a happy workforce that's happy to come into work and goes above and beyond? Because let's face it, Nick, you and I have worked for corporate America.
Yep.
Do you feel the need to go above and beyond a whole lot with corporate America? Because I sure as hell don't.
No, I didn't. Say,
Which is why you're retired at 37.
right. I'm 36. I'm not 37 yet.
Whatever.
Just did some math on this. as to how old I was like 35. I don't know. But right, like, and you're always going to have that as an employee, right? And I think every generation thinks the generation behind them, or sorry, in front of them, is lazy, right?
Yeah,
We talk
absolutely.
about it with, these kids nowadays don't want to work, and they said it about, the other generation and things like that. My grandfather, he's 80. I guess he wasn't called lazy, but I'm assuming from, the conversations I had with him, right here, he's a 16-year-old boy dumping garbage cans, and his father-in-law was out working him. Well, he had 50 years of practice in doing it, so he's like, hey, you're lazy because I can outwork you. And everybody thinks everybody else is lazy and has that ability, right? And then I personally, like, I'm very good at taking responsibility for things and doing this. So every time I hear it, and it's fun because I like to drink beer, and so I go to bars and love getting into fights with old people. It's one of my favorite fucking things to do. And most bartenders know me, and so it's just really fun. But right, they'll be like, "Oh, these kids," and blah blah. And I was like, "The problem is guess what? It's your kid, and you know whose responsibility it was to teach them to fucking work. It was your responsibility, and you know who fucked up? You, bud. Like, you had that responsibility. No. They just. No. I was like, no, you didn't teach them. Did you wake up every day when you woke up? What'd you have to do? I had to go out and pick the weeds. I had to go out and shovel the snow. I had to go out and do this. Did you make your kid do that? Well, sometimes, but I just went and fucking did it. Exactly. You went and did it. You didn't teach them anything, right? Like, the person before you instilled on you, this is what the hell you do every day. This is how you live life. You didn't teach people that, right? It is one thing I actually regret in my life is that I don't PM anything. Preventative maintenance. I wish I could tell you. I was taught if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I wait until the oil in my tractor fucking blows out because I forgot about it, and then I go fix it. It's why we have dummy lights on cars. Hey, your oil's low or your gas tank is low, right? Nobody's going to preventatively go do this. We as a society are getting taught that, hey, we can just create this to be lazy for you, right? Like, oh, hey, you need to fill up. You need to change your oil. I mean, new cars, everything just pops up. Oh, oil change time, this and that. There's a reminder set for you. You don't have to remember 3,000 miles. I have to go get this done, right?
Yeah, I think I agree with you to a point, but there's this aspect of the new generation, Gen Z. So I'm millennial, leading edge millennial, participation trophy generation.
Yep.
The people that everybody likes to bitch about the fact that we get participation trophies, like we were the ones handing them out to ourselves.
Right.
It's like, I wasn't asking for a participation trophy, but I will tell you, one of the things that's interesting is if you listen to what people are saying when they say nobody wants to work or anything like that, what they're leaving off is for what I'm willing to pay.
Right.
They don't want to work for nothing. They don't want to be exploited and they aren't seeing a light at the end of the tunnel that every other generation has seen, that if you put in the work, this is waiting for you. If you put in the work, you will move up the ranks. If you put in the work, you'll get the raise. They're not seeing that anymore, and they're not seeing any loyalty. They're not seeing any benefits to sticking around. They're not seeing any reason to show up. And employers are like, well, I have a job. I'm going to pay them a salary. It's like, yeah, but these kids have been taught that if they've been taught that there needs to be something more. And if there's not, you need to look for your next opportunity. You want them to be loyal to you until you don't need them anymore, and then you can just fire them. And these folks are saying, you know what? It's the same for me. I'm using you until I get a job where I'm going to get paid more, or I'm going to get this opportunity. And then as soon as that I get that job, see ya. And then they're going to move on to the next one. They're going to do it over and over. And it makes things a lot harder for businesses, because a lot of business owners want it to be a one-way street. They want it to be that they have all that control. They get to tell you when and where to be and how to be there and how much they're going to pay. And you should do this unpaid internship. I mean, I remember coming out of college, looking for entry-level jobs, and it's like you need 2 years experience for an entry-level job. I'm like, that's not entry level. That's experienced labor. And so it's one of those things that I look at this, and when everybody says nobody wants to work, I'm like, well, how much are you paying? And when everybody says, these kids don't show any loyalty anymore, don't want to work hard, it's like, what incentive are you giving them? What is their opportunity? It's like one of those things. Yeah. I mean, there's the paycheck, but there's also, is there a raise on the front? Is there a raise in the next couple of years? There's a creator I used to follow on YouTube, Bo of the Fifth Column. And he has stepped away, his wife has taken over, but he talked about the fact that there's no such thing as unskilled labor. That is a term used to get people to take less money. And what he means by that is, if you go to a diner and you ask somebody, somebody's taking your order and you get a new waitress or a new waiter, what's the first thing to say? Oh, be patient. He or she is new. Like, just give them time. Well, in a couple of, in a month or a couple of weeks, next thing you know, they're not new anymore, and they're whipping orders around, and they're turning tables, and that's a skill.
Yep.
Maybe it's not a skill you had to go to school for. Maybe it's not a skill you had, that took as much time to learn, but it absolutely is a skill. And so this whole idea that we have people that just don't deserve to get paid more. I'm not saying you guys are saying that, but there's a lot of people that are saying that these folks just don't deserve to get paid more because of what they're doing. I just don't see that.
Well, and everybody compares that to McDonald's, right? Oh, if you want this, go work at McDonald's. And it's like, I've worked at McDonald's a very short period of time, but it's like, look, you learn a station, and in that, it wasn't, so you start out with fries and everybody makes fun of it, but it's like, fries is actually harder than what people think. I mean, right? You get this line of 50 people and you have to figure out how many baskets to put down versus, because like as a brand new person, I was like, I don't know if one basket feeds, four larges, two smalls. My brain can't comprehend what people are going to order. I'm not used to this. And yes, okay, listening for a buzzer, shaking, doing that. That's not, but it's, hey, next thing I know, I'm getting yelled at because I don't have 4 baskets down and I have 1 because I'm like, oh, this will be fine. And so it's yes, it's not physical. I'm not breaking my back sitting here doing it, but that idea is still there. And it's, people forget, if McDonald's making that, how many people do you know that are sitting here quitting their job to go work at McDonald's? Like, right? If you think it's so fucking easy, take your butt over there and go do that, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If you think that's how life works, then go do it. And I tell this to people all the time, like, oh, hey, that person doesn't do anything, right? I make fun of all my friends that are in IT because to me, they don't do a damn thing, right? Like, they sit in front of a computer, they click one button, and then they're done. Me, I'm the skilled trade aspect of things, right? But like, and so yes, I'm jealous because you know what? They went and learned all of this stuff. They figured out the easiest way, and hey, here it is. Mm-hmm. But it's different because I do also see the times when they're swamped and they're implementing something and developing, and now it's go, and I don't get to see my friends because they're working 180 hours a week, literally. I mean, they went through this up because it has to create this company to be successful. Yep. And so I get so mad when people say that, oh, skilled, and it's like, as you said, right? You take the waiter aspect. Okay, so if that waitress writes bacon, lettuce, tomato, now that chef has to read 3 things where if they know the abbreviation is BLT, they can just go BLT, got it, right? BLT minus mayo, right? Or whatever their abbreviation. I don't even know these types of things. So it's like knowing that, getting that skill. And so I'm a firm believer that every company should be forced into steps to say, hey, if you do this, this is where this raise comes in. This is the amount you will make for learning this. At McDonald's, hey, you start out minimum wage $7.25. Once you learn fries, we give you 50% or 50 cents or whatever it might be for learning that skill. Then you go to cashier. You learn that. You get a raise for, learning that. I think you should get a raise to go into that position because now you've mastered, and then hey, now we're a cook, right? Or we're drive-through window, whatever it might be. Everything's a skill, and every little bit of
Yeah.
McDonald's is a learning thing, right? I wasn't raised to sweep and mop, and my manager at McDonald's decided to shove me because apparently I didn't sweep the perfect way. And so, that was my first time ever walking out of the job and telling somebody where to shove it. So I was like, you don't lay your hands on me, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm not allowed to swing back, you're not allowed to touch me. So, but
you bring up McDonald's, Nick.
yeah,
There's a lot of people that will sit there and go, well, McDonald's isn't a real job. That's for kids after high school.
right.
But the question always remains, it's 1 o'clock on a Wednesday. Who the fuck's working? Because it isn't a high school kid, because they're in fucking class.
They're in
Yep.
school, yeah.
So you can sit there and say all you want that that's a minimum wage job, and minimum wage is not what you're supposed to live on. But you got people that are working that job when kids aren't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's not forget the fact that we have kids in the workforce helping to support their families. We have kids, and they're not working at McDonald's. They're working at meatpacking plants. There was just a crackdown on migrant children working in these meatpacking plants, and Iowa has passed the law. Wisconsin tried to pass the law, lowering the age requirement to allow them to work more hours.
Yep.
So, like, these kids are, tell me why they're doing that when they're also fighting for a lower minimum wage for kids, because that's cheaper labor for these companies to hire. And it's just something that it's frustrating to me because, again, I grew up in a small town, and small town has this thing called social capital. Everybody has social capital, but in small towns it's a bigger thing. It's the idea that when you do the right thing, you build a good reputation, and that's something that you can almost spend like you can money, where you can say, look, can you help me out here? And people are happy to help you because they know who you are, they know what you stand for, and they respect that. And what they're trying, there's a social capital that if I make X amount of dollars, if I start a business, I owe my people as much money as I can pay them to live a comfortable life and still pay me, right? Like there is an expectation that I'm going to take care of them as much as they're going to take care of me. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's not it shouldn't be nearly as parasitic as it is right now.
I agree. You come from a very small town. My area is different from where I am. David,
Sure.
a little bit smaller of a town. But I hung out in small towns, right? I hung out in small towns to the point where, we would go do something stupid, and an hour later somebody would knock on the door and be like, "Hey, seen your boy." And it's like, damn it, like, why do you have to be known, bud?
Yep.
Granted, I drive a very recognizable car right now. Everybody knows it, but like, back then it was like, hey, here's a Ford Escort. In a normal town, nobody would have, it'd be Facebook, be like, hey, that stupid Ford Escort did this,
Yep.
Like, nobody would know it was me, right? But I understand. Hey, yes, I'm willing to help out because you were a decent human being. Versus, now I have no idea who you are. You have to rely on a person like myself or David or whatever. Yeah, hey, we'll just help you out, right? We'll help you out because we're decent human beings. So
it's funny you mentioned the car thing. Just a quick aside.
Yeah.
So I drove a very large Ford F-350 when I was in high school.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and this thing had a giant V8 engine that sucked gas like nobody's business. And I would bomb the hill going into school every day and probably be doing like 60 miles an hour in a 25.
Yeah.
And my aunt was actually a lunch lady at the school, but she also worked part-time at the police station. And they told her, and she told me in the lunch line, you better tell your nephew to slow it down, or we're gonna have to give him a ticket one of these times. So
Yeah.
about doing something stupid and getting called out, it's like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean there.
Yep. And they know who you are.
Yep.
That's the hard part. But my brain comprehends the whole 90%, and it's gonna, as you said, it funded the infrastructure of the roads, it funded this. My current belief is the fact that, right, if how I feel, especially with today's government system, right? If we tax 90%, we would spend that money on the stupidest shit. It goes back to the American thinking, right? They wouldn't improve the roads. They wouldn't do this. I mean, it would line the wrong people's pockets, and we wouldn't fix anything except for making a few more people more rich off of stupid stuff, right? I believe everybody should run for a political office, and everybody should just go get these jobs. Yeah, you're gonna have to sit here and listen to stupid shit all day, but you know, it's gonna line your pocket eventually, right?
Well,
I mean,
let's a tax rate of 90% doesn't mean you're actually collecting it, right? A
Right.
tax rate of 90% encourages you to do other things with your money because nobody likes to pay taxes. I don't like to pay taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes. Even the most loyal American, you want to, patriotic, left-leaning Democrat does not want to pay any more tax than they absolutely have to.
Yep.
And so there's a big difference between having a marginal rate of 90% versus what the effective rate is. Because remember, we have the tax buckets, right? Everything that's in that bucket gets taxed at that. But what it does is it looks at these people and says, okay, you can either spend this money over here or you can pay us 90% of it in taxes. Which do you want to do? I guarantee you these guys are going to go, this is going to make me a whole lot more money if I can buy stocks or something like that, or if I can put it into a 401k, if I can pay my people more, give them better equipment, that's going to increase my productivity. That's going to make me more money in the long run. And with these publicly traded companies, these guys that get all of their stock that they can borrow against, we got to treat that like income. We can't have these people robbing the system blind by just getting, they'll get $1 million salary where they pay a decent amount of tax, but then they get to borrow against a $20 million stock portfolio for that year. Like that's ridiculous.
Gentex, I worked for a company called Gentex here in Zeeland, Michigan. The CEO made less than the vice president. He made, I think it was $450,000 a year. The vice president made, I think, like 1.5, but the CEO's stock was, I think, 50 something $million in bonuses.
Yep.
Because of that exact thing, right? And it's hard because originally when he was the CEO, he finally retired like a year or two before I was, I left. But he started out of his garage, right? So to me, it's very hard because people like him, man, you should make that kind of money. But I also get very frustrated because the city of Zeeland, so I think they owned 400 acres or something like that, right? And they pay $1 in property taxes. $1. Like it was a thing. They're like, oh, you're going to bring employees, you're going to bring all this, we're going to do it for $1. At the time, I had owned a few apartments, things like that. And just one of my apartments alone, one of my apartments, smaller one, I was paying $12,000 just in summer taxes, right? Like, wow. How is it that I'm housing 8 people and this person pays less taxes than I do, right? Like, I think, it's funny because everybody talks about, life isn't fair and, it shouldn't be fair. But no, there has to be an equal aspect of things, right?
Absolutely. And there absolutely does. And, I do real estate development work. That's mostly what I do is real estate work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do real estate law. So what you're talking about, that's right in my wheelhouse. That's stuff we deal with all the time. And one of the things that we're dealing with here is property taxes becoming unaffordable. And people are complaining about this, and they're like, why do teachers, and they're blaming it on teachers and that they're getting greedy. It's like, because these schools need more money to operate. It's like, no, guys, they just need more money to operate. Where do you think that comes from? Your taxes. And every time you vote for an income tax break for people like John Menard, who lives in Wisconsin, give him a couple $100,000 in income tax break. That's less money for the state to give to the local schools to keep our property taxes lower. And by the way, your wages not growing makes your property taxes that much more unbearable because affordability is an equation. It is income plus expenses, or income minus expenses is how affordable something is. And so people want to just attack expenses. That's the big reason I'm not a Republican anymore, is because they refuse to look at the other side of the equation. They refuse to look at revenue. They refuse to say that revenue should go up. Or they make up something that, if we cut these expenses, that's going to magically make revenue go up. No, it won't. It never has. It never will. But that's something that we need to do, is get incomes up so that property taxes are more affordable, which means we can then afford better schools and better services for all of us.
So you can only cut so much for so long. right?
Yep.
I mean, I it's a quick fix. Okay. Yes. If you need to look at your life budget, it is a quick fix. This is a thing but it still doesn't fix everything, right? Hey, yes, we can get you into this, but your income needs to grow. I just had this conversation with a friend of mine. Right. Bought a large house. He's got a budget. And he's like, look, my last large house I bought was 2,000 a month. Now I'm at 6,000 a month. I'd rather get down to here. And he's like, we're thinking about downsizing, going back over to here. And it's like, no, why don't you just grow your income? Let's do one flip. Let's do this. Right. You can make little side things and let's get you down. Cause property taxes and insurance and all that at the end of it will be like $2,000 once the house is paid off.
Sure.
Like, why don't we just get you down to that point? You're maintaining right now. You're just not happy and comfortable. Let's get you back into this point. Right. And, he's like, I've never looked at it that way. Everything's always like, hey, I should sell this car because I don't like the payment. And yes, that is one way to look at it. There's one fast, but you have the ability to still go spend that once you have it. Right. So attack it and then go get it.
Well, and cutting, the more you cut, like we've been cutting in this country for the last 40, 50 years. Again, going back to Reagan, his whole thing has been, Reagan was the classic hammer. Everything looked like a nail. He wanted to cut spending on everything. And because of that, we have been parting out this country for the last 40, 50 years, just basically saying we need to cut, we need to cut, we need to cut, when there's really there's no more to cut, right? You can't Dave Ramsey yourself out of something if you just don't have the revenue.
Well, and when you look at the finance secretary that Mango Mussolini put up,
Yeah,
his number one goal is to extend the Trump tax cuts, which all I've heard for the last 3 years is how Biden screwed everybody's taxes, which is an aside. But they asked him about minimum wage. No, we don't need to look at that.
Yeah.
So we need to extend tax cuts that are not helping people that it could actually help. It's only helping the rich.
Yep.
But something that could help average everyday citizens, nope, don't need to look at that.
Well, they want to do that because then it makes it like, oh, hey, you got a raise without actually making them pay you more, right?
Mhm.
So if you
Right.
get that extra $900 or $500 a year, well, you just got to raise a $500 a year. To which I say, whoop-de-doo, I didn't even get $100 a month.
Right.
But that tax cut is like, oh, I've got a little extra coin in my pocket. Thank you, President Trump. It's like, no, you are taking the burden off of the employer by not making them actually raise your wages, which again, I played sports almost till I was 24 years old.
Mm-hmm.
We were always working for the same thing. I was an offensive lineman. I wasn't going to get any glory unless I got my running back into the end zone, right? Like but I was a teammate and I was a consummate teammate. And I was happy to sacrifice my body for my quarterback, my running back, my wide receiver, my tight end. Like that's what I was there to do. That was my role. I'm happy to play a role, but they had their roles to play too. And if they didn't, I sure as hell wasn't going to keep doing mine.
Mm-hmm.
And we all were going to get glory if we won. And, I did a video on TikTok about playing for the name on the front of the jersey because we got way too many people playing for the name on the back right now and not playing for the name on the front. The name on the front is America. Like the United States of America is the name on the front of all of our jerseys. And we got too many people thinking that the way that we move this name forward is by making this name the most important name out there. And it's completely ass backwards.
Well, it's one of the things I hate when I see on social media is like, we're going to own the libs. Okay, cool. All you're doing is screwing over half of the nation. Like my goal out there is not to screw over conservatives. My goal is to make life better for people.
Right.
And that's it. Like none of us want anybody to fail, right?
Oh.
We want to celebrate victories. We want everybody to do the right thing. And I think that's a great analogy, right? The front is America. This is who we are. Yeah. And, the fact that everybody thinks that, and that's, I think that's what my big problem with this election was we won and you lost versus, right? We as people won, and that is, it's like, holy shit, you're over here wanting to just win. Like you could have placed a sports bet on this one and said, yes, this person's going to win. Right. And it's like, that is not how this works. Like we need to get to this point of we as society won, right? had a great thing.
I mean,
They-
the sports analogy is apt. I did a video on this. The sports analogy is we're a football team, and when you have a football team, you have an offense and a defense, and we scrimmage each other all the time. That's your Republicans and your Democrats. You can choose which side, is which. Doesn't really matter.
Yep.
But you come together to play other teams, and those other teams are out there. It's China, it's Russia, it's Europe, it's all these other groups that we are going to compete against, and that we are competing against. And the problem is we got one side of the ball, whether it's the offense or the defense, and this going to get partisan, and I'll own it. We have one side of the ball that doesn't see that we are on the same team anymore, and they are trying to win practice rather than win the game.
Mhm.
And it's hurting us. It's hurting us very badly, because I have friends that voted Republican thinking, oh, I'm going to own the libs. It's like, dude, you just sacrificed like a lot of money and a lot of prosperity to quote unquote own the libs. Like that's not like, I'm sorry, I don't know a lot of liberals that were saying they wanted to win in order to make conservatives cry. You know what I mean? Like that, I didn't hear that. I'm sure there were some, but I just didn't hear that. They were saying this is going to be good for the country. And the conservatives people that I know, and I know a lot more of them, they're saying, oh, it's so great that, Donald Trump's in office, because now the liberals are just crying about it, and they're having a meltdown. It's like, guys, that's not the goal of these elections.
Right. The fact that you're happy about somebody's mental health being so fucked up, or somebody's well-being, is a problem that you need to figure out in your life, right? Like,
Yeah.
that is not something to be celebrated. That is not right. Yes, we all have that friend that bitches too much and does whatever, and
It's
you can
usually
care
me.
to you can care to an extent, right? But like, I have I say I have a friend on Facebook who constantly posts, oh, what do women want in a guy? Why what would make you date a guy? Why am I not? And it's like, dude, probably not the guy who posts this 7 times a day asking why women aren't with him, right? Like, they're look at yourself, and I'm very much a dick. I call people out and I'm like, hey, this is why, right?
Yeah.
You are way too needy. You are like, I'm not telling you how to live your life, but if you're sitting here asking for advice, which these are all questions of asking for advice, like, take yourself and do this, right?
Yeah.
And I'm never, no matter who won or lost, right?
Mhm.
I'm never going to celebrate that sense of, oh man, I picked the right team, right? This
No.
isn't a heads or tails call for the fucking Super Bowl. Did I win fucking 10 grand? This is my life you're fucking with, right?
Right.
And that's where my problem in lies. You go back to you said, hey, Trump, oh, my money became more. Sure, we can all agree. What Trump did was make a tax cut. So we all had $10 for the richer people. Sure, they had 23 extra dollars in their paycheck. So our paycheck did look a little bit better. But the difference is my paycheck stopped looking like 10 extra dollars 3 years later, 4 years later, whatever it might have been.
Yep.
And that CEO's paycheck maintained that same. They got their tax cut forever. My tax cut was very short lived. And people only look at the here and now. What's happening right here, right now? And you forget, hey, this is what happened. And companies, oh, hey, we have to raise your health insurance. Gentex was known for that, right?
Yep.
Hey, we're trying to eat the cost of this. Wait, sure, I got quarterly bonuses. I got things. We were doing, truthfully, as an employee, I was doing very well. I wasn't mad about the company I worked for. But you're going over here saying, hey, we have to raise this. Wait, you gave me a 25% bonus, which means you made 75% more. Like, you can't absorb another $26. Like, why am I paying for this? Well,
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we're on this page. No. If my next bonus is 18%, I'm still very happy, right? Like, guess what? Part of my life is completely covered at this moment, right?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, that point's exactly right. Like, the idea, and again, I'm not trying to, I am very pro business. I'm very pro people not being on the social safety nets. I am pro, and like, I just take a different approach to it, right? Like, I see a problem, I want to solve it. I don't want to just point it out and blame somebody. I want to try and solve the problem. And so like people that are, a lot of people complain that taxes are wasted with all these social safety net programs and things like that. Welfare, they'll call it, even though welfare has been gone for a long time. And you look at that and you're like, well, I think we need that because that encourages people to take a risk, right? Like you want people to be able to take that risk. And if they fail, they don't go destitute. They might go bankrupt, but they don't lose everything. And at the same time, I don't want people on those. I want their employers paying enough that they don't need that. That it's just not something that's used except for when somebody goes out and tries to start a business and that business fails. So they fall back on that, get back on their feet, dust themselves off, and get back to work trying it again. It's definitely a safety net, not a hammock.
Not a lifeline.
Exactly.
we talk about how people act, and I'm going to go back to the football analogy for a minute. So I'm going to guess, Mike, born in Wisconsin, you're a Packer fan.
Yep.
Boo.
Born in Illinois, I'm a Bears fan. Nick, born in
Boo.
Michigan, is a Lions fan.
Go,
Hey, I love your guys' coach.
You know what? I will tell you, right? I mean, he's changed the NFL in the fact that, I mean, look at how many teams are going for it on fourth down,
Yep.
win down in the right. Never.
I mean, the
was a
Commanders are
thing.
doing it like every time.
Right. I mean, we just had it against us with the shitty ass team we lost to because
The Commanders, yes, I just
yeah.
said that.
I don't care who they were. Say, but right, like it's yeah. I mean, so when you're implementing something and you're realizing, hey, statistically, this is what's going to happen. Stats are stats for a reason, right? And
Yep.
I texted a buddy of mine because back when we were kids, we used to play Madden. I'm assuming all of you did too.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
The original.
They get so mad when I go for it on fourth down, and to me, it's like, dude, it's a video game. No, that wouldn't happen in real life. You can't do. Well, and now it's happening in real life. So I texted him like, "Hey, do you owe me an apology for all those statements?" Or,
it's funny, Nick, because Bears and Lions played twice this year.
Yeah.
You beat my team twice.
Yeah, close game, first one.
I didn't hear a fucking word out of you.
No.
Lions just lost to the Commanders. What did I text you after the game?
Sorry, bro.
That's it.
Yeah.
Because again, I've reached that age of maturity where I don't need to rub it. You already feel like shit your team lost.
Yeah.
I hate the Lions.
Yeah.
I feel bad for you that your team lost. I really thought this was their year. They've been great.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
I really thought so.
And I haven't encountered a ton of Packer fans because I've lived most of my life in Michigan. I have encountered a lot of Lions fans that give me a lot of shit for being a Bears fan. I hate Lions fans.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I give you shit for being a Bears fan, but that's as far as it goes.
Right. You don't do it after the Lions beat the Bears, and I don't do it if the Bears beat the
The
Lions.
fact that you're a Bears fan, that's why I give you shit. Packers fans, the same exact thing. Like, I couldn't care less. Like, it took me, again, we call it maturity. It took me a while to realize my life doesn't revolve around, if we win or lose, my life doesn't change. Yes, I have a little bit more endorphins coming out of me of excitement.
Sure.
But really nothing else, right? Like, I got hated so much because last year everybody's like, oh, it was such a great season, this and that. And I posted, fuck that, right? Failure is not an option for me, right? I don't know any other job that you can get paid $30 million and fail at and still keep your job and be happy about it because you made a fucking attempt. That goes back to the whole, who as millennials, participation trophy. I don't want a fucking trophy. I want the goddamn championship. I'm here for one thing and one thing only. Like, to tell you, I'm disappointed, right? My Tigers this year, we were a team that shouldn't have done anything. We actually made it to the play. Yeah. I'm disappointed that we didn't win, but I was happy that the team had an opportunity. But like, you're built, hey, this is going to be a winning team, and then you don't make it. So you're like, yeah, I'm pissed. Like, I'm so tired of, once in my lifetime. We can go on this topic for a million years. I'm so annoyed by it. But, everybody holds, and we go to that football analogy. Everybody holds it for their sports team. Well, you had a good season compared to.
Right.
It's the same. Why is it that we can be okay with an okay loss in football, which doesn't affect any of our lives, but you're not going to be okay with me getting a little bit of help to get to that next point of life, right? Like, hey, congrats that you got this, right? Like, we're not celebrating people's victories. We're not celebrating people's things.
No, and also we're not celebrating the guy that put in 50 years building a company, keeping, generations of employees
Mhm.
and their families sheltered, fed, because that's what their salary is paying for, is their food, their shelter, the education, the
Yep.
keeping all the suppliers in business, keeping all the customers happy, and then retires with 20, 30 million dollars. We don't celebrate that person. We celebrate the Elon Musk who came over here, probably lied on his immigration paperwork, started a company, failed at it, started another company, failed forward, and all of a sudden he is now a billionaire and he's throwing around his money buying an election. And we celebrate that versus the people that actually put in the work and just, grind it out for 20, 30, 40 years
Yeah.
and build a good life for many people and are stalwarts in their own community.
Have you seen the interview with his father?
Yeah, I have.
What a hilarious interview, right? I've never met a person more disappointed in their own fucking kid to sit here and say, "Hey, if there's a way to cheat the system or lie, steal, and cheat, that's my son." And it was like, holy shit, the guy is honest, right? Like, I
Yeah.
like his dad way more than I like him.
Well,
Right?
and not only that, but I don't know if you remember the part where it was all over social media where he was talking about Elon's mom's family being Nazi sympathizers.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you see that salute yesterday, you're like, oh, wow, that's interesting. But at the same time, that's nothing because he's now a conservative, which means that we are a Republican, so we can now write that off as just him being weird. Because, if a Democrat were to do something like that, it would be lights out, like that person would get terminated, like canceled, right? So,
Yesterday, yeah. And that's it's so disheartening for me. I grew up conservative as well,
mhm,
but very the wrong way. I grew up the conservative that people are currently, right? I mean,
okay,
um, and so my whole life I've changed. Because I and to watch that, it just sends me so much anger, right? Like
yeah,
in my hometown here, there used to be some guys that would walk around with Nazi stuff on, and I believe, you know what, I'm so pissed off that it happened, and I'm pissed off I'm not in jail myself, but I also realize that's maturity to just let these children do their stupid shit. And so I have to remind myself that I matured and just did this, but like that to me is like one of the worst things that's ever happened in this world, to take out a human being for what they are and what they believe in. It shouldn't be allowed. And for a human being to stand up there and do that salute, and you can call it, oh, don't read into it so much.
did it twice.
You know what?
Yeah, I did it
Like,
twice.
I do the for my number 3 is held up like this, right?
Sure.
I had no idea. Somehow it became like a white power symbol.
Right, right,
I was like, what the fuck are you talking? Like, I have no, like, that's 3 to me, right? It's
right.
1, 2, 3 here, and so, but it's just, it blows my mind that a human can get away with something like that, and the fact that people are just okay with that. And there's still those people out there in this world that think that they're better than somebody because of a skin color. They think they're better than somebody, and it's like, you look at, people hated Barack Obama because of his skin color, but it's like, you look at the human. I mean, he's worth millions of dollars. He's done
Mhm.
very successfully. He holds himself to a very high standard.
Yep.
He talks elegantly. You're mad at a human for doing good for themselves and making an impact. Truthfully, I'm very scared to lose his Obamacare. I think that's one thing. That was one thing closer to the medicine that David wants. Right? He wants what is it? Socialized
Medicare for
medicine.
all.
What's that?
Medicare for all.
Yeah, it's a right. Or I he wants, David. What do you want for
Medicare for all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And
Yeah, socialized medicine,
right.
universal health care.
I say, when it comes to money, I don't care how much people make. Just don't rip people off. I say I'm a landlord. I tell people all the time, I don't need to make $1 million off of one property. I need
Right.
to own 1 million properties and make $1 off of each person.
Right.
Right. That's how. I'm not trying to become rich yesterday. I'm just trying to offer a good quality something for something. Right.
I use this analogy all the time. My daughter was on medication for her rheumatoid arthritis. It
Yep.
cost $4,000 for a 1 month supply. But if
Mhm.
you call the drug company, they'll give it to you for $5. Well, if it can fucking be $5, then it's fucking $5. It's not $3,000. You're only charging $3,000 because you can get a lot of people that aren't smart enough to fucking call.
Well,
Yeah.
we just did this medicine for my wife, and my wife, she called and she's like, all right, hey, I guess the place we went to must have been smarter than us. I give them credit. They're like, hey, cash out of pocket, this thing's $110. So my wife's like, oh well, we want to put this towards the deductible. We're gonna go over to this pharmacy and we'll get it and it'll go towards the deductible. And so like, all right, with your insurance, this is $250. And I was like, wait. I can pay cash of 110, or I can pay insurance and pay 250. I'm dumb and stupid, wasn't born yesterday. Of course I went and paid cash for this, right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, but tell me how the fuck that's a thing, right? Like insurance is supposed to be there to lower that cash price, right? I'm paying in to lower this amount of money. And that's where I think the world needs to be fixed is, right? Cash is no longer, it's weird because cash is so much more king now than it was back in the day. And that's where my problem lies with people is if you can finance it, people will go finance it. And to your point though, most people don't have the ability to pay $110 in cash, so they're going to get screwed for $220 financed because hey, you can make that payment for a very long time.
Yeah. Well, and when you talk about medicine, I have a very good friend, former teammate for the Badgers, who is an orthopedic surgeon. And people think that doctors are the reason. I mean, he gets paid very well being up in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. And people think that doctors are the reason medicine's so expensive. First of all, it's not. It's all the administrators and all the people that they have to bill and the fight with the insurance companies. But at the same time, like if you think a doctor wouldn't take a little bit of a pay cut in order to offer a better, offer more healthcare to people, you don't think very highly of your doctors. Because I guarantee you that these people are doing it not for the money, but to actually help people. And it's just so disgusting to see people just think like doctors are just greedy people. Like doctors don't even know what they charge. They just go to work every day and collect a paycheck. 99.9% of them.
Oh, and that's it, right? So my best friend is a physician down in Houston. My other very good friend is the head of infectious diseases in the Virginia's area.
Okay.
So my father-in-law ended up being he had to get foot surgery done here. My wife works in the medical field. The doctor comes in and says, look, I have to charge you for all the stuff that we use, but my pay, right, what you're paying me to actually do this, consider it wiped, right? As a human, he's going to go, hey, he looked at my wife and said, thank you for what you do for us. Here, this is covered. Like I got, and so people don't understand, like doctors do this on a, like,
oh yeah,
like, I have to charge you for using the gauze that we do. I have to charge, but me, I don't need paid for this, right? Like, and it's weird because you go to your friend that knows how to work on a car, and he goes, yeah, dude, a case of Bud Light to change the spark plugs. If you go to the guy that knows how to do it, right, that it's going to cost you $500 to change those spark plugs. It's just, it blows my mind that people think that medical people are the problem. Oh, they're getting paid so much. No, right? That's we don't set the price and how much they actually get paid, right? My wife's a therapist, right? Like this company says, hey, we're charging $500 an hour for therapy. We're paying my wife $20 an hour. Like they're making that difference. So sure, my wife gets to use the bandage or whatever it might be. And so that's built into that, but still that company has now made $250 and only $20 of that is my wife's pay, right? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a lawyer. My rate right now is $375 an hour.
Yeah.
I promise you that I do not make anywhere close to $375 an hour. Like we charge clients, and that pays overhead and everything else. But that is just, again, the idea that doctors are the problem when we have nonprofit hospitals that are opening up new wings all the time, and that they are actually like their CEOs. We had one hospital merger here where they had co-CEOs, each one making over $7 million a piece.
Stupid.
Like
stupid.
What? It's like Doge level dumb.
Yeah.
I can tell you a story off the air.
I did this. My wife went to her 5-year or 10-year, I think it was 5-year company anniversary party. again, it might have been 10. I don't care. So I look up the CEO because he gets up and speaks, and because I'm an asshole, I look at it, and originally when he signed 5 years ago, he made, let's call it, $500,000.
Okay.
By the time he spoke at my wife's 5 year, he's up to like $4.5 million. And I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, what'd you get hired in at?" And let's call it $20.
Sure.
And I said, 5 years later, my wife is making $22.50. I said, "Why the fuck are you making $2.50 more, which is a 10.5% fucking return?"
Right.
And this guy's return is 170,000. Like it's a stupid amount of figure of what his return. I said, "You tell me what you did different than him."
She was making the decision.
Exactly. Like the idea is, and I said, "Look, the weird thing is the way he made the company money was said, hey, let's not give raises, let's not do this, let's charge extra for here." And yours was, hey, I think if we don't do this, we can make a little bit of money, right? And then the company, so the company made money. She made it for it, but now the CEO gets the credit. But like, it blew my mind. That's why I don't have a job anymore, because I just can't stand that idea. That, right? I mean, I you know I'm I flip houses, I do things, and so my guys get paid what they want for the most part. It's a very fair wage. It's what they need, but they're going through some medical stuff right now. I gave my guy a bonus for this. One of them couldn't afford his car payment or something like that. I gave him a loan. Granted, I call it a loan. I made it clear to him that it's a loan. I haven't seen that money back in 9 months, right? But like, it's that sense of like, you're over here. If I do well in a house, great, but I'm taking all of this risk. I'm doing this, but you're working to make me that successful. Without you, I wouldn't be here, right?
Yep.
And I see that, and I think most companies don't realize that. I wasn't a union fan for years. Now I'm becoming a union fan. I will tell you, I think that there's a time, and I think now is that time, and that's why I'm becoming more. Again, I'm still very Republican, but I'm coming more Democratic, just like yourself, right? Like, I think now is that time, right? People do need this raise. I don't believe that $15 minimum wage is going to fix the things that are happening. I think there needs to be an overhaul of everything, right? We need to, granted, and the problem is it becomes my beliefs, but again, hey, if you're here for this long, this is what your raise becomes. If you devote your time to this company, you're guaranteed this amount of money.
Yeah.
David's in a position where he's told, hey, you can make $10,000 as entry level and $30,000 max, and so after 4 years he's maxed out. So no longer for the rest of his life he will never make more than 30 grand, right? Whatever the
Sure.
actual numbers might be.
Right.
But it's like, wait, what is my incentive to be here except for you're going to give me a cost of living raise of 2%, right?
Right. Regardless of what the cost of living actually increases by, it's going to be a 2%.
Yeah, 7 to
2%
14%.
COLA. It's like inflation was 9%, 2%.
Yeah, no, they don't care because it's going to average out. No, I mean, right? If the average return on a stock market over 10 years is 10%,
Yeah.
why can you not give me that guaranteed average of 10% pay increase over that period of time, right?
Right.
If you can earn that and that's the average, sure, give me a 9% guaranteed over a 10-year period, right? Like,
Well,
you're still making 1% extra.
that sounds a lot like a pension, which they got rid of and switches to the 401k because that saved a whole bunch of money that they could then shovel out to shareholders. Remember, this all started under Milton Friedman and Justice Powell, who was actually an attorney for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce before he became a Supreme Court justice, where they have the Powell memo where he basically said we need a concerted effort to wrestle back this economy from the workers. And that's when you get Reagan coming to power. That's when you get trickle down economics, Milton Friedman talking about the fact that corporations have no responsibility to anybody but their shareholders. And that's when you start getting the playing for the name on the back is more important than the name on the front. And they spun it as, if you maximize the value of the name on the back, you're going to improve the name on the front. That's how they spun that. Is that if you are a star, if you are LeBron James, the team is going to be incredible. And guess what? LeBron James was on the Cavaliers for a number of years and didn't win a damn thing. Then he goes to Miami with a bunch of supporting casts. They win a couple rings. Then he goes back to the Cavaliers after there's a supporting cast and they're able to win the whole thing. Again, you can look at sports. Sports can be a microcosm of what we have going on if you look at it the right way.
Yep.
Well, and I want to do a callback to owning the libs. So, day after the election, I go to a doctor I've only seen twice. Young lady, early 30s. And I'm wearing my break room, hate it has no place here shirt on.
Mm-hmm.
And she walks in and she goes, I said, how are you? She goes, I'm okay-ish. And she looks at me and she goes, I assume you're okay-ish too. And I said, no, I'm fucking sad.
Yeah.
And for 30 minutes, we talked about everything that scares us about what's coming up.
Yep.
The fact that her and her husband are going to give it a few months and then decide if they're moving out of the country because they might want to have a kid and they don't want to have a kid in this mess. I'm talking to her about the fact that, you know, I'm a brown guy who's a first generation born American on my father's side, and I got a daughter that's a lesbian, and what the hell does that mean to all of us?
Right.
So you have conservatives running around going, we're owning the libs, and then you have liberals going around going, I'm just afraid I'm not allowed to exist now.
Yeah. I hear that, and it's something that, like, so I'm a fighter. I never backed down from a challenge. That's why I ran for Congress. I didn't think I was going. No, let's be honest. I thought I was going to win. It wasn't a realistic thought, but I thought I was going to win. And I'll tell you why. Is I have gone through a culture change before, and I've seen it happen. And again, microcosm. In my high school, we went when at my freshman year, we had a really great coach, and this guy taught us how to be leaders, and that was his thing, was character development. And our freshman year we were okay, our sophomore year we were really good, our junior year we were supposed to be excellent because we lost like 4 people from the previous year, and we sucked. We went 3-6. Then the next year we're moving up to a larger conference. We're going to be the smallest team in that conference, and we were expected to win 2 games, and we went 12-2 and won the state title. First time ever winning state. And the reason we did is because we came together and we enacted that culture change. And so, yeah, I understand the fear. And, that's why one of my favorite shirts is a shirt my wife got me that says, this is what a feminist looks like. You know how many women in one of the reddest counties in the state of Wisconsin come up to me and make a point to say, I love your shirt?
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, you want to know how, going back to the point about, how do you get a woman? Support them.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard. Be on their team. Don't look down on them and be like, why don't you like me? Why won't you do this stuff for me? How about you do something for them? Like, this is not that hard. If you show respect, I have 2 daughters. And when I have people talking about trans this and trans that, and what about your daughters? I'm like, I worry more about the jackass packing a piece on his hip than I do somebody that's got the wrong genitalia between their legs using the same bathroom as them. Like, that's not a concern. We have gender neutral bathrooms throughout my entire house. It's just fine. I don't have an issue with it, right? Like, I don't have an issue with this. Like,
Never heard anybody say that.
I mean, and they're like, well, that's just you and your family. I have people over all the time.
Yeah.
I don't worry about any of this. Like, the fear that they drive in what is different, drag queen story hours. Don't send your kids to it then if that bothers you. I have a bigger concern. I am a proud gun owner, but I have no problem putting putting up with some inconvenience, as John Stewart puts it, to make sure that the wrong person doesn't get their hands on a weapon.
Yep.
I know that I'm not that wrong person, but if I have to jump through these hoops because it helps catch the wrong person, bring them on. The more hoops, the better at that point. I don't really care.
Oh, that's it. I mean, I'm just say David and I are both very much gun lovers. We
Yep.
own them. I say my gun collection is probably bigger than my wife cares for. But right, my daughter was seeing a therapist real quick for some stuff going on in our life, and the therapist goes, "Hey, is there any guns in the house?" And my daughter goes, "No," and I said, "That's a lie." I was like, right? I said, "Yes, there are weapons in the house."
Yeah.
I was like, but my daughter knows, apparently she doesn't know where they are. She doesn't know how to access them, but she does know how to handle them, right? Every time she has a Nerf gun or anything like that, she gets told constantly, hey, you don't put your finger on the trigger unless you intend to shoot it.
Yep.
And you also never aim at anybody's head. Let me be clear
Yep.
about this, right? And so I harp on it. with my nephews, I harp on it with things like, hey, you're walking around with your finger on that trigger. Why? Oh, we're going to go play. Right. When you go play and when you intend to shoot, that's when that finger goes on the trigger. And
Yep.
because I believe you need to teach this, you need to instill the correct things, right? It takes one screw up to lose everything, right?
Yeah.
And yes, this one's a play toy, but who knows of the next one? And nowadays, gosh, I mean, I remember when I first got an airsoft gun, right? That thing looks so real.
Yeah.
Dumbass kids were chopping off the orange tip. And it was like, dude, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
But instilling the right thing constantly and doing the right thing is the way that you're supposed to do this.
Yeah.
You know, you had said something earlier. Sorry, it was about. Now it's lost my mind. So, but you know, I like the way you think. I think that you have this right. You know, say feminism, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Feminism. You sit here and say, "Hey, I have women coming up to me." Like, a feminist doesn't have to be a female, right? Like, it has to be a person that believes in feminine equal rights, right?
Well, and don't fear that you're going to lose out to them and that it's somehow going to be unfair. If you can't win that competition, you better yourself. Like I guess I see that as personal responsibility. If I can't compete, I need to do more for me. I don't need to sit there and go, well, that person shouldn't get that because they're brown or black or, you
Yeah,
know, whatever they might be. Like, no, I need to be better. I'm sorry, I played in the world of sports. I played in the world of almost professional sports.
yeah,
If you were good enough, you played. If you weren't, you didn't. Simple
yep,
as that. And I dealt with some politics where I might have been better, but you know what? I really probably wasn't because guess what? Everybody that beat me out ended up playing in the NFL.
yeah.
So I'm pretty sure. I mean, I backed up Joe Thomas, who is like
Oh
got
shit!
beat to
Yeah, yeah,
football, everything
yeah,
else he does. Like he's a great guy. Everything he touches turns to gold because he's good at it and he puts time and effort into it. You know, I backed I when I my senior year, I was playing left guard, center, and right guard, trying to start at each one of these positions. And I had freshmen going in front of me. Guess what happened? Every one of those freshmen ended up going to the NFL. So, yeah, like as much as I can say, like I probably should have played that year and I would have been okay and we would have been okay. It's probably true, but they were better. I mean, clearly they were better. They played in the NFL and I didn't. So, like, that's like, I don't know. I guess this fear of inadequacy and this idea that I need to put other people down in order for me to succeed. If that's the case, I don't want it.
yeah. And you know, I absolutely agree with you, right? Like, and that's you're a person that takes responsibility for
Yeah.
yourself. Most people don't do that, right? Like most
Yeah.
people, oh, I've been here for this long, but what have you done to give yourself that
Right.
expectation, right? What have you can what it and oh, actually, sorry, that was what it was.
Yeah.
We talk about the seeking out women thing, and like, right, it's not, oh, my wife has this aspect of things. I just had this conversation with a very good friend of mine. He got divorced. I said sorry. He said no, it's for the great thing. And I said, look, you know, at one point you absolutely love this person to
Yeah.
the depths of your soul. Like, that was the greatest thing that's ever happened to you in life. It turned out not to be that way, and that's your choice. And we were talking, and I said, you know, his wife, he travels. I mean, he travels, and he's very happy for his little six-figure income, right?
Yeah.
It's a small little six-figure, and
Yep.
he's very proud of that. And his wife said, hey, look, you know, I need help on the home front. They had a kid, and then they had twins, right? And that becomes a struggle.
Sure. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
instead of either A, going to make more money so that way he could afford a nanny and helping out, or getting a different job to, you know, let's say he makes 110. You know, instead of going to take a job making 70 and letting his wife go work for 40, and then they can
Tag
commit
team
to,
kids. Yeah. I mean,
right.
you go from man to man to zone defense pretty quickly there.
That's it, right? And so, you know, but the idea is like, dude, she asked for something. Your expectation was she just did all of this. You don't want, in my opinion, you don't want to be that father, right? You wanted
Right.
her to be everything. You know, I was talking to my therapist, and it's right, like, Instead of saying, hey, I'm going to help my wife do the dishes, it's no, I'm going to do the fucking dishes because
Right.
I'm supposed to. It's not helping. It's not my wife's job to do
Like
that.
babysitting your own kids. That's not a thing.
Oh, it used to piss me off. Oh, are you babysitting the daughter today? No, I'm being a father to my kid today.
Right.
That's what the fuck I'm doing. Like, and so it's hard because I deal with sexism and I fight it on the opposite because I do feel like people, every time it's a dad, it's you're babysitting your kid. If it's the woman, right, they're just
Right.
they're hanging out.
They're
with
just
their
being
kid.
mom.
Right, they're being
Yeah.
mom, and it's like, no, I'm being daddy today. Okay, that's what the fuck I'm doing. Like, stop sitting here comparing the. No, I'm not babysitting. Like, I am being a father to my child today.
Absolutely.
Like, yes, my wife happens to be working. I'm out here, and so like that type of stuff bothers me. And it's like, but right, like it is not helping your wife. It is doing the things you were supposed to be doing. Right. My wife does not have to take charge. She doesn't have to clean this house. She does it, and I appreciate it. And I'm not helping her. I'm doing what the fuck I'm supposed to. Don't get me wrong. She does 90 and I only do 10% now.
Yeah,
But-
yes,
but
exactly.
we have the same common goal that's supposed to happen. And we are both trying to reach that. Sure,
Yep.
she exerts more effort into that than I do. I'm not afraid to admit that, but it is something I'm working on to try to at least get us to 75-25. So, but right, like, and I hate that because, you know, again, growing up, very conservative aspect of things like, oh, the woman's job's inside the house, the man's job's outside. Yeah, no, like that's not how this is done. Like we are equals. My wife is very equal to myself. We had a daughter. We raised a family. We are married, right?
Yep.
And so many men and so many women forget that this is a we aspect, right? We became one, not we became two. Never in my life have I ever gone to a wedding and hey, now you two have become just you two, right?
Yeah.
No, you two have become one in the journey that you have, and that's what it bothers me when men sit here and try to talk to me about like, oh, well, she'll do this, and no, you didn't step up to take any part of her burden. You didn't say, hey, honey, why don't you go out for a second because you're overwhelmed. Even if, as a man, if I'm overwhelmed and my daughter's driving me crazy, not my wife's just like, oh, you just go. Nope, I can tell you're fucking frustrated.
Yeah.
Why don't we all go together, right? And we'll just we can let her go and you and I can talk. Or why don't you go, right? Because I got to go out the last 20 times, right? And again, 20% to fucking 80% to 20%. Like, I go, please, just because it's something I wasn't raised with. It was something that wasn't instilled within me. It was something, but it's something I am working on as a man to change, right?
Yeah.
I think that's huge. That most men need to realize you have to be the change, right? I have a friend that makes $5 million a fucking year, right? I mean, just does very well. They have 2 kids, and he hired a nanny, right? Hey, his wife stays home. Yeah. Hey, please, I'm going to give you the help. I'm going to give you what you need.
Right.
This is what
Raising kids is not easy.
Oh fuck no!
And I'll tell you, my
village.
dad. Luckily, I was raised. My dad. I remember. I distinctly remember saying like doing something was women's work. My dad looked at me and goes, "It absolutely the fuck is not. Like that is just work to be done." And my dad wasn't a quote unquote feminist, but he also wasn't afraid to do what was asked, and he made sure that we knew there was no such thing as women's work and men's work. You know, there might be men's work, but there is not women's work. And I thought that was, you know, looking back on, you're like, oh, guess dad was a bit more of a feminist than you realize.
Yeah. Well, the problem is he was a big giant man to you, and so you looked up to him as a man, and it's like, man, that really is a man who's setting an example for me, and I'm a great man because of that, right?
Funny thing was, he was a little guy. I mean, he's 5'7", I'm 6'6", so.
Oh shit!
I was 6 feet tall in 4th grade. I was looking down on him when I was like 10 years old.
6'6", bud. Man, you did play for Wisconsin, didn't you?
Exactly.
You know, so I appreciate you saying that because, you know, it is something that has to be brought to my light and explained in a different way. Like, oh, because I say it all the time. Oh, I have to help my wife do this, and it's like, no, I have to fucking do this.
Oh yeah,
right?
I get caught with that too.
Yep, and it's changing that verbiage, changing that understanding. There is no expectation. I don't expect my wife to do anything I wouldn't do or can't do, right? Like
Right.
if I ask her to go help me move my toolbox right now, hey, can we go move this toolbox? You know, it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know, Nick, you see it in every walk of life, though, in all honesty, because
Yep.
Dawn being the primary owner of Break Room.
yep,
I'm a minority owner in that I'm the silent 30%.
right.
When she has to go out and do business stuff, she's had probably 60 to 70% of the men she encounters go, well, you know, talk it over with your husband.
Yeah.
And her answer is always, I don't have to talk to him about shit. I
I
make
can
it.
do shit. It's like,
You know, we have customers come in the door and they're like, I had one the other day and she's like, oh, so it's fun working here, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, I don't really work here.
yeah.
And the fear went over this woman's face and she goes, what are you doing? I'm like, my wife owns this place. I do what I'm told.
Yep.
There's the
And
old joke about there's a stand-up comedian talking about when he's talking to his kids and he's like, look, I got my job because I slept with the manager.
Yeah.
And, like, he's like, doesn't make sense to me either, but this is coming down from corporate. I can't do anything about it.
Yep.
Like, that's
Yep.
exactly right. I am fine with that.
Yep. So no, I say I wanted to get your viewpoint. We touched base a little bit on minimum wage, and I kind of gave you my idea of it. I wanted to go back and figure out. See your stance on minimum wages. If we pay more to people, they're going to stimulate the economy. They're going to go do things. Have you ever heard of the MIT experience? They did a whole case study, and it basically says I think it's $105,000. Or no, actually, it's lower. It's $73,000 a
Yep.
year. Your happiness doesn't change in life above $73,000 a year, right? So the difference becomes so at $73,000, you're going to get an 18-foot boat. At $1 million a year, I'm going to get a 28-foot boat, right? Whatever. We both are on a boat. We're both very happy. Our happiness isn't any different. So do you feel so? I feel that number will change and it will become higher because
Sure.
right, the expectation is people have this. So what is your feelings and opinions on that minimum wage?
So yeah, I think that $73,000 is a long ways from a $15 an hour minimum wage. But to that point, I guess I would argue I agree. So then why are we so hesitant to raise taxes on the very, very rich? If that money isn't making them happier, why are they taking it? Right? Like I'm at a point in my career where I'm getting paid well and I feel like I have enough, which is something that I think past generations have had,
Yep.
but current generations don't because they're taught that if you get complacent, you die, right? Like
Yep.
if you get complacent, you're going to, if you're not constantly growing, you're dying.
Yep.
And maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe there's not. Like, I still want to see more money brought in, but I'm not looking to bust my hump and maximize the amount of money that I can bring in the door. Like, I'm not only thinking about business, I'm thinking about being here, taking care of my family. I'm thinking about being here, enjoying my house, enjoying being with my wife, enjoying hanging out with my friends, and being able, I go to the grocery store. I don't really look at the prices. I look at what I need to buy in order to make X meal or whatever. So, like, I'm very blessed in that regard.
Yep.
But that $73,000 number, like I think that there's some legitimacy to it. I think that with education debt, that number probably creeps up because I'll tell you, student loans, I've been paying on my student loans except for since COVID, I haven't been, but prior to COVID, I'd been paying on them for over 10 years. And my debt went from 150,000 to 215,000 while
Holy
making
shit.
payments. So like, that's one of those things where it's like, I agree with the premise, and I think that it's they try to use it, not the businesses that try to use this try to use it to justify we don't really need to give you more money because it's not going to make you any happier. It's like, well, okay, but then why are you giving him the money or her the money? Like, why do the people at the top need so much more money? I think a lot of people think that a millionaire has a lifestyle similar to ours, just with an extra zero at the end. And that's just simply not the case. A gallon of milk is a gallon of milk for whoever buys it. Now, if Kroger gets their way, that might change. They might end up paying $30 for a gallon of milk, while the rest of us are paying $5. But until that happens, they don't have to live a millionaire lifestyle. They choose to do that. And the idea that they need to get X amount of dollars because that's the lifestyle they chose, maybe I would like to choose to be a millionaire, have a millionaire's lifestyle. When do I get to make that choice for me?
Well, yeah, and I love the fact you brought up student loans because that's something Nick and I have talked about on here ad nauseum,
Yeah.
especially around Biden's student loan forgiveness. And I harp on the fact that, you know, if you take out $100,000 in loans and you pay on it for X number of years, the loan should not have gone up. That's
Right.
not how loans were set up when I was in school. Not true. I'm older than both of you. I'm Gen X. But that's not how loans were set up when I was in school. Very minimal interest. Interest didn't start until after you graduated, 6 months after you graduated. Now they start on day one, and all they do is screw students over so that they're indebted to whatever job they get right out of high school because you're afraid to leave that because now you have a little bit of money to pay the health care that you need and the housing that you need, and you'll throw the little bit extra at the student loan, and you're not going to get out of line because you got to have that job.
Yep. Well, and it's also an investment vehicle, right? Like,
Mhm.
let's not forget something that as our national debt grows, it makes the rich richer. They use our tax dollars to pay those debts because our national debt is treasuries.
Mhm.
Stephanie Kelton, if you guys know what MMT is, modern monetary theory, there's
No.
there's a very, very good documentary called Finding the Money. It's on YouTube. It's free. Check it out. It Modern monetary theory is basically an analysis of how the system works. But she has a thing where she says, how many of you, if you had your chance, would you wipe away the national debt? Everybody raises their hand. She goes, okay, if you guys all had the opportunity to get rid of treasuries, how many of you would do that? And everybody's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, that's an investment. That's our debt. Our debt is treasuries. And so rich people buy treasuries. There are mutual funds that buy treasuries. It is an investment asset that we create. And so it is making the rich people a whole lot more money, and they're just using our tax dollars to funnel it to them. But they're not paying the taxes. We are. And so it's
Right.
one of those things that you're just like, we get it whether we get it coming and going, right? Like, and student debt is one of those things. Like, they made it bankruptcy proof, so you can't discharge it in bankruptcy. The only thing only that in taxes can you not discharge in bankruptcy for the most part. There's a couple other nuances there, but it's basically your student loans and your taxes you can't discharge in bankruptcy. What the hell? Why is that the case? And if you wanted to just fix the student loan problem and you didn't care about the fallout and all that kind of stuff, just bring bankruptcy back.
Yeah.
People would file bankruptcy. You'd have 7 years of bad credit. So what? You're not going to be borrowing anything at that point anyways, but you're also not going to have that huge payment that's preventing you from getting a house when you can borrow again. It's preventing you from getting an apartment. Like, all of that is gone. And you want to see the price of things come down? Private lenders will be out of the market so fast, it won't even be like, there will be no private student loans at that point.
I personally don't believe there should be.
I agree.
I'm fine with people making money, but as long as you're
Mhm.
not doing it in a fucking shark way, right?
Yeah.
I lend money like it's fucking candy, and I'm limited by the federal government on how much I can charge, right? Um,
Are you?
yeah. So anything above 25% is predatory, right?
Oh, okay. Sure.
Yep. So, but these people can sit here and do this, and you can do it when you're 18. You're technically, if you can go to college at 17 years old, you're still allowed to legally sign for yourself, right?
Yep.
So if you're a young kid, it blows my mind how you're not able to buy cigarettes, beer, or anything, but you can sign yourself up for a fucking $100,000 in debt yesterday,
Well,
right?
just like you can sign yourself up for war, right? You can sign up to go give yourself to, sacrifice yourself for this country, but you can't have a beer. Like,
Right.
there's stuff there that I would change a lot of that. Maybe not the tobacco part because it is so addictive, but
Right.
alcohol. Yeah, I mean, I would lower the drinking age if it were me, because if you're gonna be old enough to go, serve in
Die.
the armed forces, you should be able to have a beer before you do it.
Yep. Well, and the weird thing is because we are the federal government, because we are the government. So if you get deployed over into Europe, which the drinking age is basically non-existent, right?
Right.
You still aren't allowed to drink. below the age of 21 because you're an American citizen doing this and you live by American law. Yes, we're on foreign country, but like, I had a kid on my team who's like, I'm going to the Dominican Republic next year. He's going to be he's a senior, so he'll be 18 years old, and he's like, the drinking age there is 18, and I'm like, bud, I can't talk to you about this, but like, right? The places that have, so you look at Amsterdam, right? They have one of the lowest addiction rates possible because it's common. Hey, we don't charge for anything. You want to fucking screw up your life, that's on you. But their addiction rate is so low that because hey, it's it's available. Everybody wants it because it's something you can't have, right?
Right, exactly. It drives demand.
Right. It's like a stripper, right? I mean, it's like you can't have her, so you got to have it. But it's just really weird to me how America sets its random standards and they choose. I don't know the exact. My wife would know it, but I think it's men's brains don't fully develop till 24.
Yeah.
It's actually like later than so. Like, why is the drinking age not 24 for men? And I think women's is actually younger. They're fully developed at like I want to say like 21 or something like that.
Yeah, 22 somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's like, wait. So if we're talking, hey, to make a fully developed decision, why are we not doing this when we know the science is out there? When we know that this is a thing, why is this drinking age not to this point? You're sitting here giving it, oh, hey, let's just do it. I'm fully agreeing with you. Hey, look, make it wide open, make it this. You know what? It's the responsibility of a human. The problem is I think there's too many shitty ass parents who are alcoholics or drug addicts who will just be like, yeah, kid, go ahead and start it up. Like they're not parenting their child, right? They just follow in the footsteps.
There's definitely an element of personal responsibility there.
Right.
What'll fix that, Nick?
What's that?
Get rid of abortions.
Oh, Jesus criminy. So, say,
you knew I'd go there.
Yeah. So it's, it blows my mind. So I think, and then, so do you want, so you're saying you don't really want to tax the rich necessarily. You want the ability to tax the rich if they don't give the money back to,
if they don't invest the money, if they don't look to grow their wealth, and if they don't like start working for the long term, we're going to charge you for it. I mean, so there were two philosophers back a long time ago, like 500 years ago, John Locke and I think Walter Hobbes. Don't quote me on the first name. It was Hobbes and Locke, and they had two different views on people. Locke believed that we were a cooperative species and that we could do great things together, but if we had the freedom to do it. Hobbes thought that we needed to be managed under an iron fist. And that is where this country has been an experiment in iron fist versus cooperation since its founding. And that's still what we're fighting about now. Do you trust people? Do you not? And I tend to lean on I trust people to generally make the right decision, but that requires a bit of accountability. And that accountability means that we have to have people that are held peer pressured into doing the right thing. We need to make sure that they're staying on the team, that we can't let people get too rich because then they just crave more and more power. And that's something FDR understood. FDR actually said, like, hey, I'm going to save capitalism from itself. We were on the brink of going communist in the 1930s, and FDR stepped in and said, nope, I like capitalism, we like capitalism, but I'm capitalist. I'm going to save you guys from yourselves. Otherwise, you're going to lose your heads, and we're going to go full communist. And that's when we got the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Tennessee Valley Authority. We got unemployment insurance. We got all the OSHA. All that stuff happened under FDR in order to save capitalism from itself.
I say, and there was people back in the day that made the right decisions. It's just people keep screwing it up, and we're going backwards, right?
Well, because Reagan basically said the whole goal of the modern Republican Party is to dismantle the New Deal.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't understand. Like, workers in the Republican Party should not mesh, because the Republican Party doesn't give two shits about them. The modern Republican Party. And because it's trying to dismantle the New Deal. Now, are there things that should be changed about it? Sure, we can talk about that. Can we talk about where we should have tax rates? Should we talk about, work requirements and stuff like that? Sure, we can talk about all of that kind of stuff. But this whole idea that like we should just defer to the people that already have money, that is never going to result in you making more money. Like that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and let's say the people that made money, they're there for a reason, right? They have a whole different mindset of thinking. They have, um, and not everybody's supposed to think like an entrepreneur, right? I believe in capitalism in the sense that those that want to do it should have the ability, right? Those that don't want to risk anything should still have a stable aspect of life,
Yeah.
right? Like,
It's a symbiotic relationship. You cannot scale a business without employees.
right.
Like if everybody was an entrepreneur, we'd have a bunch of artisans out here and we'd be back and selling our wares at the market and not having large companies able to do great big things.
Yep.
So there's a very good picture that I did a video with talking about my view of capitalism is basically the army obstacle course. You have the guys that get over the wall first that are reaching down, pulling the next group up. Nobody's taking away anything from the guys that got there first. They're very happy that they're there.
Right.
But they aren't sitting there, flipping off the guys that didn't make it and finishing the obstacle course. Their job is to help everybody else get over.
Yeah, that's so true. Gosh, I mean, I didn't catch that one for some reason. I've watched a bunch of your TikToks. I haven't watched that one. I'm gonna go watch it because that's you have great analogies. I love the
Thank
way
you.
I love the way you think. I love the way you're putting things because it does change my perspective, right? Sometimes it takes a different viewpoint to get things figured out. So
That's what lawyers do, right? Like we have to speak in analogies. We have to compare things and,
right.
same as, different than, more similar to, things like that. And that's something that's really helped me. Like prior to going to law school, I was a full-blown Republican. I don't see why I wouldn't be now if I didn't start looking at it from a lawyer's point of view and poking holes in my own theories.
Right. I want to become a lawyer just for the wrong reasons. Let's put it that way. So, I think the government's corrupt, and I just want to fight the government on constant battles. So,
Sure.
the only way to do that is to sell everything I own and then live my life fighting the government constantly. So,
I have a healthy skepticism of the government, but I find it hard to believe that a group of people are only working to screw me, right? Like I think that there are things that are wrong, there are laws that should be changed, and there is a non-responsive government, and that absolutely is a problem. But I think that's more on us not being willing to switch parties when we go to the voting booth because we've always voted one way or the other.
Well, it's funny because I've always kind of attacked life the same way I do coaching. I was a firm believer that if you're an idiot, you need to surround yourself with smart people.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a smart person, you need to surround yourself with smart people that disagree with you.
Yep.
Nick and I coached together for 1 year. There were times he did not agree with the decisions I made. I was the head coach. This is what we're going with.
Yep.
He would fight. He would argue. Sometimes he got his way.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I got my way. But I had a small enough ego that I didn't think automatically I'm always right.
Right.
Well, and that's right. You didn't have the turnover, right? I mean, the only reason I turned over is because I had a kid. My life changed. Otherwise, we'd still be coaching. I mean, right? We're not coaching together because of that, but like we talked about the school I coach for currently. The position came available for softball, and I said, David, you coming to coach with me? Right? Like, because we see things differently. We understand we are here for the greater good of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
As much as we talk about it, like as a team, you said it earlier, right? You guys didn't win the year that you were ranked, right? And
yeah, the year that we were supposed to be excellent, we lost.
Yeah,
we got crushed.
We are number one in the nation currently right now. My team.
Oh wow.
And we just took third, right? This weekend.
Okay.
Call it and it's funny because I'm a very humble person. Might not seem like because I'm very outgoing, but like I'm very, very humble person. Like my team won state last year, right? Yeah. Greatest thing that's ever happened in my life, in coaching wise, even in playing wise, right? I didn't win state as a kid,
sure,
but right, like we stoned a single pin, and they carried a shitty shot. Doesn't make them any better. Doesn't make us any worse, right?
Yep.
It's called luck, and I believe in luck, and I believe so. But tomorrow school's canceled, but we're supposed to build that team that beat us tomorrow. But it's like we're gonna come back and we're just gonna show you why we are who we are, right? Like
Yeah.
we are ranked number one. And you know what? If we don't win, I'm not gonna be any more disappointed, right?
No.
My girls, on the other hand, this weekend was amazing for me because they finally can see their potential within themselves. And it's like, oh, hey, here we go. It took half of a year for me to keep telling you, you are the greatest thing that's walked planet Earth. Let's go, right? And now they believe in it. Now they see it. Now they can go with it. So
I mean, we went I was just up at my buddy's place this past weekend and we were talking, and our quarterback came over too. And he's like, guys, remember how bad we were in 7th, 8th, and 9th grade football? We won one game in 3 years.
oh geez.
We were bad. And then we should have won our junior year. We're terrible. Our senior year, we were supposed to be awful. Like I said, we were supposed to win 2 games.
Yeah.
But my one friend is a coach. He's coached basketball at the college and high school level. And he's talked about this coaching philosophy that teams are made up of basically groups of three groups: the top third, middle third, and bottom third. And really the team goes by which either the top third or the bottom third pulls the rest of the team in that direction. That 2/3 of the team is what gets you wherever you're going to go. And if you have a good top third, they'll take that middle third and make the team great. But if that bottom third wins that tug of war, that team's not going to be good. And when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, he's got a very good point there. We were, top third. We weren't most talented. It's the attitude and the effort that you're willing to give.
Mhm.
And it was a very interesting way to look at it. And I really like the analogy a lot.
It's funny because I took a lot of my coaching from one of the coaches I had in high school, and junior year didn't play a lot. Very senior heavy school class,
Sure.
and he made it a point for everyone that ran on Scout O or Scout D.
Mm-hmm.
You're important. You need to be here.
Yeah.
You're working towards something.
Mm-hmm.
And I would take kids that had no business playing softball and make them feel like they were the most important kid there.
Yep.
And by doing that, they always would buy into anything I was saying because they're now important.
Yeah.
And they know you care. They know
Yeah.
you're going to show up. And for a lot of kids, that's the most important thing.
Well, and our society needs more people telling them that we're going to show up.
Mhm.
That they're not on an island. I think that's the biggest reason we have such an infatuation with guns right now is because people feel like they're on an island. They have to defend themselves and they don't feel like they can rely on their neighbors and their friends. And, my goal when I was running was not to alienate the right, because obviously I wouldn't win the election if I alienated the right, but also like I have friends around the right and I'll have vehement disagreements with them, but I still care and I still
Right.
want them to be successful. I don't want them to fail, like we've talked about earlier. They are important. Everybody is important. From the guy working at McDonald's to the guy that's CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It is all incredibly important, and we can't do any of this without them. The problem is that we're acting like we can. And the only people doing anything of value are the people at the very top, this small group of people. And I'll tell you, like we saw with the Luigi thing in United Healthcare, that didn't really hurt the company at all. I mean, they still had the meeting.
Say
The
they
guy
had the
died,
meeting
so the
and
meeting.
they
Literally
posted
just
the
walked
job.
over the blood spot.
Yeah. So yeah, coaching in sports, like I am a huge believer that is in a direct analogy to our lives,
Mhm.
and that we'd do a lot better if we got some good coaches. I mean, Bill Belichick, who I cannot stand, is like he treated Tom Brady like he was the scum of the earth. Like he treated every player the same. It's like, you're Tom Brady, cool, get your ass in line.
Yep.
Like that's how that goes. And you have to do that. I mean, my senior year, I flipped off my coach. And because he was teasing me, he was picking on me, and I flipped him off. We're joking around. We were friends. And he comes up to me and, while we were stretching, he's like, I'm gonna have to run you, right? Like, yeah, I know. Like that.
Absolutely, I know that.
Yeah, I know
But
that.
it was
Like,
worth it.
exactly. know, was I thrilled about it? No, of course not. We had a hard practice and then I had to go and run, but it was important for the rest of the team to see, here's a captain that is running because he disrespected the coach.
Absolutely.
Even though we were joking around, it's still disrespect. There is a boundary you don't cross. And
Yep.
we've lost that accountability and we have lost that respect for one another. And it's something that is we need to figure out how to get it back, right? Because right now we have two tiers of society. We have the rich and we have everybody else. And instead of trying to pull the rich down with the rest of us, so we're all at the same level, we have a bunch of people down here saying, I want to get up there so I get that special treatment. And to me, that's the wrong approach.
But sorry, so I guess when you put it that way, right? So you have the people that do you actually feel the people who are down here are actually trying to get to that level?
Yes.
Do you feel that they're either A, trying to get a new job, or do you feel like they're actually trying to learn from those rich people?
No.
What is keeping them from getting to that level? Because
The rich people.
something I struggle with like crazy. Right?
It's the pick me. It's the pick me folks. It's the people that think that if they spout the right rhetoric, they'll be picked by the people at the top to come join them. They think that they are temporarily embarrassed millionaires and that we need to lower the taxes on the people that are rich because someday they'll be there. They don't actually have a plan to get there, other than they're going to go to work every day and they're going to do what they can to try and save some money, but then they're going to go out to the bar and have a couple drinks and buy a new truck and do all that kind of stuff. Like,
Yep.
They don't understand that their wages are not going to go up no matter how hard they work, because they'll create more value and that value gets sucked up by the shareholders or gets sucked up by the CEO. And so they think they're going to get there. And then at that point, they want those lower taxes.
So I guess I would create that to uneducated in the sense of, right, they don't understand what it takes to actually be to that point, right?
Well, yeah. And also they don't understand that sometimes to be at that point, it takes just luck. Like
Right.
it takes having the right credentials, it takes going to the right school, it takes, being in the right field. I mean, there are certain things like, it used to be that you moved up in an organization by doing all the different jobs. And that's why there was a respect for the workers, because your manager used to do your job. Now that's not the case. You either start as management or you never go to management.
Right.
And that's that two layers. People don't realize if you don't start in management, you're never going to be there. And even if you start in management, you may never get to the top, but you at least have a chance of getting there. Right. But if you're on the factory floor, there's like a 5% chance that you're ever going to reach the C-suite, if that.
And that's 5% is, I think,
generous.
Much, right? So, yeah, too much. Because like, I've lived that whole life. I apply. And it's funny because I remember I gave myself like 2 years, and I said I'm going to apply for every single position that becomes available.
Mm-hmm.
And never once moved from my job.
Yep.
Right? Like, I know David's dealing with some of it, right? Like he applied and didn't even get an interview. And I had plenty of, right? The CEO position of Gentex came available and I applied for it, right? Instant response of like, hey, but I told myself I'm going to apply for every single bit of this, right?
Yeah.
Because the hopes is, hey, oh, you want this? Oh, where do you want to be? How do you want to do it? Like, what does it take? Because I want to ask you a million questions of how does it actually take to get here? I'm going to do that. I mean, at the time, right? You promised me $500,000 a year plus fucking stock bonuses of $10 million. I want that. That's what I want. That's what I'm living my life for. How do I get that? And nobody's there to draw you a picture to say, hey, this is how you do it, right?
Yeah. Well, because for a lot of people, that's just not going to happen. And they don't necessarily want you to get there because they like you in your role over here because that's making them money.
Right.
And, it's nothing against the people that want to get there. But it's the idea that by letting these people that are there not pony up and pay their fair share, they are actually limiting their ability to get up to that next level.
Right.
And it allows for this two-tiered society where your status, class, or wealth gives you a leg up over everybody else. And to me, like, again, not communist. I'm full blown capitalist, but I think that when we're a country that's ruled by law, that law needs to apply to everybody, regardless of who you are.
Well, and say the problem I have with that, right, is we're a country, but I'm a firm believer that the law needs to be followed. If
Yeah.
not, it needs to be addressed and changed.
Yeah.
Right? The example, I went through an eviction. Tenant right has 10 days to appeal something for right, and he actually filed on day 11 and got it right. And so that's what makes me want to be a lawyer, is because the amount of times that my local municipality has allowed day 11 after it is stated in law that says you have 10 days. Why is day 11 being accepted? Why is it
Yeah.
being allowed? Why is it being right? Like, you made a law, you have to stand behind this law.
Yeah. I
Why
agree.
is another one happening, right?
Yep.
And so it just and that day 11 ended up costing me another 3 months worth of money, right?
Yep.
Because it had to restart everything, get the refile. So that was a
Yep.
very frustration. And I have multiple stories of that, but like it's just, I believe, like, it's funny because I do believe in the government. I believe that
Mhm.
things are set in place and the right reasons are intended, but we need to make the change to do it for the right reasons, right?
Yep. Completely agree.
So I say we've been running a little bit now. Anything that we haven't hit on that you want to hit on, you have to tell everybody else.
No, not from my point. I appreciate you guys having me on. This was great. This was
Yeah.
a great conversation. I appreciate your time.
Good. We say we'd love to have you back on. We're hoping that you'll do that for us.
Yeah, you let me know when. I'd love to
yeah.
be back on. I'll remember to have a drink this time.
Yeah, that'd be great. David, anything else you need to add? Since we're part of each
Sheboygan
other?
Brewing's oatmeal cookie stout was very good.
Oh man.
I saw you grabbed a new Glarus.
Shut up. Actually, oh man, I grabbed a couple. All right, so I'm gonna run through my giant list of things. So I did have my Bud Light, I had my Yingling, I had a New Holland Poet. I was gonna tell you why I was off air for a little bit. I had a New Glarus Spotted Cow, which blew up a little bit on me.
I saw that.
I had a Oak Spire Four Roses by New Belgium, which also blew up on me a little bit. So I'm standing over here to the side, and I have little spots on my floor. And then I also had one of my favorite beers, New Glarus Wisconsin Belgian Red. So apparently the ability being home. So yeah, you're from Wisconsin.
Oh yeah.
New Glarus is one of my favorite breweries of all time. If you haven't had their stuff, the Wisconsin
I
Belgian,
absolutely had their stuff.
so it's top 3 favorite beers of all time is the New Glarus Wisconsin Belgian Red. So yeah, apparently being home, I allow myself to drink more than the David and I limit in the in the office there.
Yeah, we have a strict 3 beer limit because sometimes we've done a little worse than that.
Sick.
Nick, tell everybody what you always tell them.
So as always, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your family. We appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, feel free to leave them and we will address them as quick as possible.
Mike, don't run away. We'll talk for a minute off air.
Sounds
Thanks
good.
for joining us, everybody. We'll be back real soon, and we'll get up information on how to watch Mike because his TikToks are great.
You've dialed in.
To Box and Brews, you might hear something
You can use.
like tips on your cash or tips on the suds.
You're gonna want to
The
use.
smarts of these
Because
stuff.
they know the
And
brews.
they know the box, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks.
So listen up, because shit's not funny.
And save yourself some
Beer money. Bucks.
and brews.
Bucks and
Bucks
brews.
and brews.
Brews.
Bucks and brews.